Okay, thanks everyone for waiting. Good morning and welcome to our webinar about carbon negative retail builds and how to use these as a selling and marketing tool. My name's Sandy and I'm a senior project manager who is involved in many of the builds that we'll be discussing later. For those here that aren't familiar with what we do, we are Next. We're a large format printing business with a focus on crafting sustainable 3D builds for events, for pop-ups, for retail displays, and other activations. We work primarily with activation agencies to bring their clients' visions to life. In today's webinar, we'll address how to answer your clients' questions regarding sustainability and carbon emissions. We'll cover how to simply and effectively communicate carbon emissions savings in a way that educates and resonates with your customers using real-life scenarios. And we'll provide comparisons between materials and present some of our own real-life case studies. Okay, so without further ado, I'll pass the baton over to our General Manager, Pranil Chandra.
Thank you, Sandy. Thanks everyone for joining us this morning. We will get stuck straight into it. I know everyone's got a busy day planned. I've got some really important statistics I want to share with you around brand value alignment. I'll do that very shortly. But before we begin that, there's another really important piece of statistic I want to share with you. It's really important to us. And that's that 35% of the work that we produce at Next Printing at the moment, we consider it to be sustainable. Now, when I say sustainable, we mean that we know that it's getting recycled, we know that it's recyclable, and we are managing the process of that recycling to ensure that it is going through the right channels and streams. For some brands, 35% is low. For some may consider 35% to be high. For us, we are working towards making this number a lot higher than it currently is. We are in the industry generally seen as one of the more sustainable printers and builders. So that gives you an indication of where the industry is at the moment. Now, 18 months ago, that 35% was sitting at around about 15 to 18%. So we've done a fair amount of work. Now, the question is, why have we done it? So let's just get stuck straight into that very important piece of information I wanted to share with you around brand value alignment. There was a recent study by 5W Public Relations a few years back, and it found that 71% of consumers prefer buying from companies that align with their own values. Right? Now, we know that for millennials and Gen Zs, they are going to be the biggest spenders as we move forward. And we also know for them, leaving the world in a better place than where they found it for future generations is really important. So we know that sustainability is a really important value for them. So we will go through today how brands can align with that value. At the moment it is difficult, but we'll share with you some information that will help. Now, continuing again with some statistics. One of the consulting groups that we highly respect, the Boston Consulting Group, in their research, they have found that 87% of consumers believe companies should integrate environmental concerns into their products and services. All right? So that number is now increasing significantly. We've gone from 71% and we've got 87% of consumers are insisting on brands integrating environmental concerns into their brand. Now, this is the statistic that really got us. And it's that 77% of customers at the moment believe that brands aren't doing enough to share information about the sustainability efforts that they're currently doing. So there's a belief by consumers that brands are making sustainable efforts, they're just not sharing a lot of their information with them. Right? So there's three things that I've shared so far has helped us sort of create a status quo scenario. And then there's this other scenario where there's a lot of brands out there who know that sustainability is important, but they don't understand sustainability very well. So they use very generic and loose terms such as recycle, recyclable, biodegradable, and they don't know much about how it works, and essentially is coming through as greenwashing. Now the ACCC have picked up on this recently, and they've openly advised people that they will be fining businesses that make false claims. And obviously we feel this is a good activity. And now let's get into what customers want and how we can help you to make sure you don't fall into this case where you end up greenwashing. So just quickly recapping what we've spoken about. We said, what do customers want? So with that in mind, what if we could give our customers and their customers what they want? A very simple notion that most brands and businesses live by. Just give customers what they want. In this scenario, giving information around sustainability, which is very clouded and complex, isn't as simple. But we will go through that now. So again, what do customers want? Based on what we've spoken about, this is what we know. They want to purchase from brands that share their value. And they want to make informed decisions by understanding those values. So the question now is, how can brands provide that information? And from, as a producer, our perspective, how can we provide this information to the agencies that we work with and to the brands? So we made a considerable amount of effort to try to figure this out on our own. Over a 12-month period, we made some headway, but what we came up against was a lot of ifs, a lot of buts, a lot of whats, and a lot of gray areas, which we couldn't answer. And we quickly realized we needed to go externally and partner with someone who are experts. What we did, we partnered up with a carbon scientist, Dr. Les. Dr. Les has over 30 years experience as a carbon scientist, and he's worked with leading brands such as Alinta Energy. He's worked with BHP Billiton to help them understand what their carbon emissions are, and also help them reduce their carbon emissions. Now, if someone can work with these big organizations to reduce their carbon, we were very confident that we could work with Dr. Les in reducing our emissions, or at least understand our emissions, because we were already down the path of sustainability. So our brief to Dr. Les was very simple. We wanted him to analyze the carbon emissions of the top 80% of the materials we use. We wanted him to give us emissions data on the processes and the equipment at Next Printing, so we know what our emissions are based on our operations. But going beyond just operations, in order to help brands understand emissions and provide critical data and information, we wanted him to develop a carbon calculator that would assist us in providing the information to you. And also, we wanted his help in establishing an effective communication strategy that conveys the information in a way that customers understand it. Because we know that customers are craving it. We know that 77% of consumers want more information around sustainability so they can make informed decisions. We just need to find a way of providing that information. So what we came up with throughout this process is what we call a cradle to grave life cycle assessment. What I'm sharing with you here is what we came up with in partnership with Dr. Les and also in partnership with our wonderful suppliers, Reboard. Now, Reboard is a fibrous-based board that we use in a lot of the constructions and builds that we do for activations and events. So in this scenario, we looked at every stage of this, the life cycle of Reboard, all the way from when the tree is planted and it absorbs the emissions, all the way to when the tree is processed, cut down, it goes through for board manufacturing, goes to Reboard, and it goes and is sea freighted over to us from Sweden, and the warehousing of the Reboard with our wonderful partners, HVG, and then it coming to us, to our facility. It takes into account all the operations that we have in Next Printing, emissions associated with our production, and then finally us delivering it to our customers where they use it, afterwards where we pick it up and we send it for recycling. So it takes into account emissions at every single stage. From there, we are able to get an exact emission data for every single project that we do. Not at a complete business level, but we go granular and we're able to provide this information at a project level. With this example that I've just shared is for Reboard, but we've done this across the board for the 80% of the products that we use. So what that gave us essentially is a comparison study. So what we found is we could offer our customers some really valuable insights by comparing potential project emissions across various options. So we can take one project and we can let customers know that if this project was crafted from substrate A, then substrate B, then substrate C, what would the emissions be for each one of them? And what that created was a real eye-opener for us. And I want to quickly share one of those, a very important example in the comparison study. We've used media wall as an example here because we know almost all brands that we work with at some point in time use media walls. It can be any walls. It could be walls used in retail displays at events and activations. And what we found that commonly these walls are constructed using three materials. It's either MDF, fabric, or Reboard. What we found in this process, for this example, let's use the 9-meter size wall. We found that if it's constructed from MDF, the total cradle to grave emissions, your CO2e emissions or greenhouse gas emissions, is 73 kilograms using MDF. We always suspected MDF was going to be higher than Reboard, which is what we normally use. And that was confirmed. But what we were shocked by was how carbon intensive the use of fabrics was. Now, for a 9-meter wall, a piece of fabric that can be folded up, slipped inside a bag, and sent via courier to our customers to use. Something so small has 170 kilograms of greenhouse gas emissions. And then you compare those two numbers to Reboard. Now, Reboard is carbon negative. So the entire 9-meter wall display is minus 11 kilograms in carbon emissions. So by providing these three examples, we can now help educate our customers, and our customers can in turn help educate their customers. So, but that's a lot of numbers here, but what does it all actually mean? So the first thing we want to touch on as far as that's concerned is carbon negative. What is carbon negative? So in a nutshell, carbon negative is when a business removes more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere than it emits. So effectively that creates a smaller CO2e footprint, and it keeps the number below zero, making it carbon negative. So in the case of Reboard, for example, the tree that's planted, the tree that grows, over its life absorbs more carbon than we use once the tree has been cut, turned to Reboard, shipped all the way from Sweden to Australia, going to a warehouse, then next printing, using it, next printing, creating it, all the energy used in creating the substrate, the product, the stand, it going for use, taking all of that into account, all the carbon that's emitted from it, the original tree that it came from absorbed more carbon than what we let out. So that's really powerful, right? It's an extremely powerful tool, and it's information we can share with our customers now. But there is always a but. We've now spent about 20 minutes having a discussion around what carbon emissions is and how it relates to Reboard and so on. The question really is, how can we craft a short and impactful message that truly resonates without overshadowing the core reason a customer is at an event or a store, right? You only have limited time to share this type of information to create brand value and create brand value alignment. Because the customer isn't there to learn about sustainability. Customer is there to learn about your product, services, or to actually buy your products. So the message of sustainability cannot overwhelm the actual reason why the customer is at a particular place. So what we came up with, we did our research, and we found this one particular case study where Harvard University, in their research, what they identified is, let me just change my slide. So what they identified is we've all seen these energy ratings on when we go to a retail store such as JB Hi-Fi or Good Guys or Harvey Norman, on all the electrical goods. Right? What Harvard University identified is that when consumers are making a purchase decision, even though this rating is right in front of them on the fridges, price was the number one decision-making criteria, and the energy rating was a lot lower. So in partnership with a similar retailer to Good Guys over in the US, Harvard University, along with the energy ratings, what they also provided was a dollar value of what those energy ratings mean over a 10-year period. All of a sudden, they found that the penny dropped. The consumers quickly recognized what the energy rating meant because they were able to associate it with something they used on an everyday basis. That 10-year dollar value, what they found was there was a 70% uptake on consumers spending more money on the more expensive fridges because they had this piece of information they could really easily digest. This information didn't take away from the fact why they were actually there to buy the fridge, but it helped the customer in making a decision based on critical information being provided. It created really strong brand value alignment. So now the question is, how do we take this and how do we bring it into this display world that we're in? So we'll share some really some of the case studies that we've come up with that we've done recently. This particular display or an event we did for YSL in partnership with one of our valued customers, the PIM Group, who were the activation agency. So the back wall that you see here is crafted completely out of reboard. There's no use of any other material besides reboard and our internal process of printing the reboard. Now, what we found in this process, using our calculator, we crafted this message for them. By replacing MDF with reboard, we saved 487 kilograms in CO2e emissions, equivalent to 2,097 kilometers of car travel, or an average home being powered for 10 days. So we've provided them the exact CO2e emissions of this product, the savings, by doing a comparison study. But more importantly, we've given their customer a succinct message that they really understand, they can relate to. Everyone knows that car travel, the emissions relating to car travel. Everyone knows that home uses a lot of energy, which emits a lot of carbon into the atmosphere. It's a very simple piece of information they can digest, and it doesn't take away for the reason why they actually were at this event. So here's a few more case studies. This one in particular we did in partnership with the Bastion agency. They were approached by Mattel and Grilled Burgers as part of the launch of the new Barbie movie last year. Grilled wanted to convert one of their stores in Sydney into Barbie Dream Burgers. So we'll show you the final result before we talk about numbers. Okay. Now this particular case study was really interesting in the sense, first, the scale and the size of the project, but more importantly, when we were quoting for this project, the Bastion Group, the agency, approached us and advised us that they've received a quote that was 20% lower, and they were concerned. Now, the reason it was 20% lower was because it was the other printer or builder were using a foam-based product. So throughout the process, we help Bastion Group understand the difference and help Grill understand the difference. And to their credit, even though it was more expensive, they chose to go with the more sustainable solution, right? So it's wonderful that they've made that decision to spend a bit more. But if you can't communicate your sustainable efforts to your customers, a wonderful marketing and branding opportunity is lost. So again, here we can provide information. By replacing MDF with Reboard, we have saved 1,262 kilograms in CO2e emissions, equivalent to 5,432 kilometers of car travel, or an average home being powered for 26 days. So again, relating the message back in a way that consumers understand. It doesn't take away from the Barbie Dreamburgers experience. If anything, it elevates that experience because they get to see that Grilled is doing the right thing by the environment, the right thing by the consumers. Again, strengthening that brand value alignment that we speak of. Right? Because there's a saying that we often use in business and also in sports. How you do anything is how you do everything. And to Grill's credit, they made a conscious decision to go green. And now the tools are available for them to start using that message to promote their brand, but at the same time also educate their customers. It's another quick case study we wanted to sort of go over. This one was a job we did for a wonderful agency partner, Make House, and this was done for Clinique. Clinique rented a store in Pitt Street Mall in the city. It was opposite the Tag Heuer store, so high foot traffic. What they wanted to do to launch their new product, they wanted to convert the entire store into a train carriage. But the train carriage needed to mimic their brand. So as you can see, it was very much pink. Now, in creating this, they also told us it needed to be sustainable. So again, in this instance, we use Reboard as the base. Other materials were also used, but Reboard was the base. All the seats that you see here, the back walls, the turnstiles, the poles, everything here was constructed using Reboard. And there were other elements as well, but Reboard, again, to emphasize, was the base product. Again, we can craft a very simple message. By choosing Reboard over MDF, Clinique reduced their carbon footprint by an impressive 647 kilogram in CO2e emissions, equivalent to eliminating 13 days of carbon emissions from the average Australian household. So again, the message is clear and concise. But also interestingly, this event went over a 3-day period. So for a 3-day event, the carbon emission savings was more than what an Australian household consumed for 13 days. This was a 3-day event. So you can imagine in the marketplace generally what consumers are, what a lot of brands are using at the moment. So this is a wonderful opportunity for brands to migrate to more sustainable methods and to also stand out from their competitors. Obviously, I've spoken a lot about MDF in these comparisons, but there's another material that we want to sort of touch on, and it's what the fabrics. Fabrics is one of the most commonly used materials in retail displays and also in events. And in this full spirit of transparency, it's important that we point out that 24% of Next Printing's business at the moment is done using fabrics. So fabrics is one of the main substrates that we sell to our consumers. So before I go into this next slide, it was important that I shared this piece of information with you, so you understand where next printing is at the moment. Now, according to The Guardian, globally only 1% of all fabrics get recycled. One of the big reasons for that is fabrics just can't get recycled in any recycling facility. It needs to go to purpose-built facilities and centers where it gets processed. And in Australia, we are changing, no doubt that we're certainly changing, and there's more and more facilities coming up. At this point, there aren't enough centers. And certainly there aren't too many places where you can take your fabrics for it to get recycled. Now, then there's also a rise in what we call as printers, what we sell to our customers is recycled fabrics made from recycled plastics. So recycled PET. Now, in a lot of instances, I'm not for 1 second suggesting that our suppliers do this, but in a lot of instances, the recycled plastics that they used aren't actually post-consumer waste. They're just leftover plastic that were used in bottles that weren't actually used. They get recycled and turned into fabrics. So they're still completely virgin plastics, but they can call it recycled PET. Whereas post-consumer waste is a little bit different in that it became something else. It was used for something else, such as bottles, and then it became fabrics for us to print on. Again, at the moment, it's very complicated. Not a lot of information is available. And that's why there's questions like how, where, who. These questions still need to be answered. Now, another thing that we promote and next printing, other printers do it as well, is that we actually send the fabrics that we have left over here. We send it to our wonderful partners who get it recycled in Queensland, where those fabrics end up being used in mattresses for Sealy. Now, interesting fact in all that is, these are the leftover fabrics that we produce for customers, all the offcuts. That's the majority of the time, that's the only piece that gets sent back for recycling. That could be as little as 5%. The remaining actually go out to our customers. If they're unaware of how to recycle it, how to send it back, it doesn't get recycled. Now, the other last piece of information that I wanted to share when it came to recycling is there's two types of recycling now in the marketplace. There's something called mechanical recycling and chemical recycling of plastics. The one that's really well known, the one that's used widely, is mechanical. Mechanical recycling is when plastic is recycled, but over time, every time it gets recycled, it gets less and less, it becomes less and less usable. So you can only recycle it 2 or 3 times before it can't be recycled anymore. Then there's this new form of recycling. When I say new, it's been around for a few years. It's chemical recycling. Now, chemical recycling is where the plastics can be infinitely recycled. It can be recycled over and over again without us having to dig the ground, get new fuels to create new plastics. So that's where the market is going. So there is a future. There is a future where fabrics can be used. So as much as we've badmouthed fabrics, there is a way of recycling fabrics. We will get there. And I'm confident that fabrics will continue to be a big part of next printing. We just need, as a business and as a wider community, business community, we need to apply enough pressure and educate our customers on how fabrics can be recycled. The images that you see here on the left hand side, that's actually not made from fabric. There's actually a stand, a display made completely from reboard. Now we did this for a company called Recycled. They're a wonderful business that actually take your fabrics back, any form of fabrics, your clothes, fast fashion. You can put it into one of their boxes, and they will actually send it to a recycling facility where it can become something else. So it's a wonderful business. So we've gone through a lot of things today. I just wanted to sort of, again, summarize by going through some very important key takeaways. The big one for us is, where possible, go fiber. Fiber-based product, paper-based products, they're completely biodegradable. In a lot of instances, they're either carbon negative or very, very close to being carbon negative, right? And they also fuel the industry. They fuel the replanting of tree industry. It's really big. It helps absorb carbon dioxide. And where possible, again, go paper, go fiber. The next point is ask for an LCA. An LCA is essentially a life cycle assessment. Is something we went through earlier when I showed you that little diagram. Ask your printers and businesses that you work with if they can provide you with an LCA. In a lot of instances at the moment they can't, but if enough people ask, businesses will start to act on it and have life cycle assessments. If they can't provide that, maybe the material manufacturer can provide it with the life cycle assessment. The next thing is question everything. Transparency, accountability, and a willingness to challenge the status quo. If, as brand owners, if you question everything, if you challenge the status quo and ask for transparency, eventually it will be provided by manufacturers such as us. And last and most importantly, the message of brand value alignment. This is available to brands today at Next Printing. It'll be more widely available in the industry in the future, in the near future. But right now, when you do a project with us, even at the point of quoting, we can provide you with what your emissions will be. For an estimate of what the emissions will be at the point of quoting, and then we can also provide you what your emissions were post the event or post the activation, because we can do a deeper dive into what we used. So again, those are the main key takeaways. And finally, I just wanted to quickly touch on what the feature is, what we're working on at the moment at Next Printing. We recently introduced paper craft and origami work. What we found was a lot of these types of things that you see here is often crafted using plastic. So we've actually employed someone internally who is an expert in creating these sorts of displays that you see here. One we did for Archie Rose is completely made out of paper and is completely crafted from hand. It's 100% recyclable. All the colors are custom to meet the requirements of a particular event for Archie Rose, and of course it's completely unique and it tells a very unique story. So this is what we've got, something available at Next Printing now. Finally, thank you everyone for joining us on this webinar. We'll open the floor for any questions. Again, we're not scientists, but we'll do our best to answer your questions. If we cannot, we promise that we'll come back to you. We'll get the answer from Dr. Les and we'll come back to you.
Okay, I can't see any open questions at the moment in the webinar. Does anybody want to jump in and ask anything? Otherwise, just wanted to say that if you do want a free comparison quote for a project and to find out more about carbon emissions, feel free to reach out to us. Yeah, and we'll be sharing the recording and the slides from today's webinar very shortly. So yeah, no questions for now. So I guess we'll wrap it up.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend.